Open Channel D. Welcome to Cocktails from Mr. Waverly's office. I am Ursa.
I'm Logan.
And I'm Hannah.
Today we will be talking about the Cherbourg affair.
It's another one of these episodes that takes place in a mysterious country. It's another mysterious Balkan country.
So we actually looked this up. Terbouf is the name of a city, but it is not the name of a real country. We also are not 100% certain what the actual pronunciation of this is supposed to be, whether it's Terbouf, Terbouf. But to be fair, this is also an episode in which they pronounce one of the characters' names probably 45 different ways, so they don't know how to pronounce anything either. I wrote down all the different. There's a character named Emil, and we'll talk about that. But they pronounce his name so many different ways. So the Terbouf affair is I think it is and correct me if I'm wrong here. I think it's the first episode in which Ilya and Napoleon get involved in a crime that is unrelated to U.N.C.L.E.
Yeah, this actually it was totally non-uncle related. Like Napoleon just wanted he just got involved after talking to the innocent, right?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So in this episode, basically, Ilya and Napoleon are on vacation, and they're in Rome. And absolutely, it's delightful that they're on vacation together. And I know that this is a thing in. So I realize that Man from U.N.C.L.E. isn't a buddy cop show because they're not cops, but it is a buddy cop show. And so I realize that in buddy cop shows, oftentimes, there is this weird sort of thing where the main characters don't have any other friends. And, they totally fall into this where, I don't think Napoleon has anyone he cares about outside of all the women he sleeps with, and I don't think Ilya has anyone he cares about, period. And
other than Napoleon, of course.
Yeah, well, and so the only time we ever see them doing anything social is with each other. And this is something that is true of basically every buddy cop show that's ever been made since, the genre existed. But it doesn't change the fact that the subtext there is that these two have chosen to go on vacation together, and that's adorable.
Mm-hmm. It definitely is.
So the moral of the story here is that they're in Rome together, and it's actually interesting because they were in Rome at the end of the previous episode, and I don't know if the implication is that they decided to stay. Or if they flew back to New York and then flew back to Rome again. But anyway, they're on vacation, and while they're on vacation, they are confronted by a group of Eastern European nomads. Why am I saying that? Well, because this episode makes liberal use of the G slur, and we're going to not say that word, so we're going to use Roma or Romani instead. But there's a group of people who are, they appear to be Roma, who corner Napoleon and Ilya in an alley, and they seem to be threatening them in some bizarre and suspicious way, and then Napoleon and Ilya are pulled into a, is it like a boat warehouse?
Yes,
what is the place that she pulls? Yeah, it's full of unfinished boats. So she pulls them into this boat warehouse, and there's this immediate recognition between this woman and Napoleon. It turns out that she's an old girlfriend of his, Clara, and she asks for their help because her husband, who both of them live in Terbouf, are involved in basically trying to help uncover some corruption with the police, and specifically with the head of the police, who Terbouf is a police state, they're involved in trying to get documents that are going to prove this man's guilt out of the country, across the border, so that they can be used to oust him. And in particular, one of the men who works on her and her husband's farm, Emil, he is the one who has the documents, and so they're trying to keep Emil safe until he can get across the border, and they need someone to help smuggle him across the border. So she asks Napoleon to help with this, and he initially tries to convince Ilya that he should go home because they're due back in New York the next day, and Ilya is like looking between Napoleon and Clara and is just like, yeah, I'm gonna stay because you're an idiot, and if I leave you alone with this woman, you're gonna break up your marriage. And so anyway, the episode is about Napoleon and Ilya trying to help Clara help Emil find his way safely out of Terbouf. And they get involved with the local band of Roma that Emil is part of, and they have to kind of sneak past the police, who their big thing is that they actually kidnap Clara's husband and use him as a bargaining tool. And they replace her husband with an agent of the police who disguises himself as the husband and tries to foil Napoleon and Ilya's plans. And eventually they manage to find the real Stefan, the husband, or Stefan, not Stefan.
I'm sure they do pronounce it Stefan.
This episode has everything. Slivovits, Ilya in a tiny Balkan turtleneck.
Oh, he's like a sleek seal.
Handcuffs on a boat. So yes, Stefan, not Stefan. I'm gonna have trouble with that the whole time. But anyway, so they do manage to get Emil out of the country, and everything is happily ever after for everyone other than Napoleon and Clara, who he is handcuffed to at the end of the episode, feeling real awkward about his weird crush on a married woman. So this is actually an episode with a plot that, like, more or less just makes sense.
Yeah.
It doesn't have a lot of moving parts, but it is, it's solidly written. And it's a really great, like, Napoleon and Ilya episode as well, so.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess we should start by talking about the first scene with Napoleon and Ilya, in which they are in Rome and they are actually wearing, like, same shirts.
I wrote down they're in their good vacation polos.
But, like, look at them, they look exactly the same, so.
Matching.
When they're at the same store together and purposely got matching looks.
Yeah.
Sometimes it's just what you gotta do.
Yes.
And they have a really cute bit of banter right here that actually when I saw this, I actually was kind of in shock because I didn't realize that this show would be as openly sexual as this. But
Yeah.
Napoleon is just like, this man does not cook food, he makes love to it, and he has a weird hand movement, and I'm just like, oh my god. And then I can't remember exactly what Ilya says next, but something
Ilya's
about, like,
response is they should put people like that in asylums.
yeah. I was like, this is quite the way to open an episode.
Very enjoyable.
So basically, yeah, they're having this vacation together almost like a couple, and Napoleon wants to show Ilya his favorite restaurant in Rome.
Oh yeah, it's about hungry Ilya too.
Yeah. Hungry.
Ilya also says that he expected that they were going to spend their time in Rome doing, quote, something more exciting than looking for veal parmesan. And I just really like the idea that Ilya wanted to go, like, touristy sightseeing with Napoleon. That he was like, I thought we were gonna go to the Trevi Fountain and the Colosseum, and he's like really sad that they're not having this tourist experience.
Yeah, it's a very funny opening, and then of course they get to pretty much kidnapped by Clara's friends who are Romani, and basically the whole scene in which Napoleon meets Clara again is very weird because like Napoleon talks to Clara and she looks at him with eyes full of longing and stuff, and they're like, oh, it's almost like 7 years ago and stuff, and EA is standing there in the background and he's just greeting them with his eyes.
Oh yeah, Ilya in the background of that scene, like he just looks so like done, and it's hilarious.
Yeah.
He actually has, I would say there's like 5 or 6 different shots that are very similar like that throughout the episode. Like, they keep framing Clara and Napoleon, like, on one side of the screen, one of them, and on the other, and, like, Ilya somewhere in the background just, like, making a face like, I hate straight people. It's really entertaining because it's very consistent.
Yeah, I think that was like a deliberate decision on like whoever, like on someone's part, whether it was McCallum's or someone directed him to do that. Like that was definitely like a deliberate decision.
Yeah, like he clearly does not like whatever is going on between Napoleon and Clara. And I mean, you can read it in a heterosexual way that he just is like, we were on vacation and you've screwed it up. But
but like,
yeah,
even as you said it doesn't sound very heterosexual.
Yeah, and this is really interesting because like this is an episode written by Alan Caillou, known for making Ilya weirdly straight, unlike any of the other writers. But yet, this episode doesn't really fall into that usual trope of Alan Caillou's.
Yeah,
it does not. And in fact, Alan Caillou himself is in this episode.
Oh, he is?
So, he is. So, I mentioned in the plot summary that they replace Clara's husband, Stefan, with a member of the police. So they replace him with, what is his name? It begins with
I can't
V.
remember.
It's not Vincenzo. It's, but it's like that. So anyway, there's a scene where Stefan is talking to, the actual head of the police state. And there's another police officer there as well.
I found the names, so, Major...
Thank you, I was actually stalling.
Major Wicek, I think.
Yes. It was... Did they say... I'm trying to remember.
Oh,
Vicek, I think maybe? Yeah, so...
Yeah.
Vicek. So there's Vicek, and then there's the actual head of the police state.
And,
his name, I think, begins with M.
Morisco. Colonel Morisco.
Yes. Yes. So Morisco is the head of the police state. He's the guy who's like running Terbouf, and then there's Vychek, who is like his lieutenant. And Morisco is looking at Stefan and basically threatens, hey, you can't let your wife go through with this. If she's somehow involved in everything that's happening with Emil, you're going to end up getting in trouble, blah, blah, blah. And to make sure that we don't have you or her get involved in any way that's going to topple my corrupt empire, we're going to replace you with Vychek here. And so they hold Stefan captive, and Vychek goes to be Clara's fake husband. But Morisco, the head of the police state, is actually played by writer Alan Caillou.
I didn't realize that.
Which is really interesting, mostly because Alan Caillou, who is known for making Ilya heterosexual, he spends a long time stroking Stefan's face with his riding crop.
Oh yeah, that scene.
Yeah,
it had a very strange, it had a very high like sexual energy to it, and I think I don't know if that's just me reading into it because I'm gay and I see anything like that, my brain instantly goes sexual, but like, it seemed pretty sexual.
Yeah, no, I'm sorry. Anytime you gently stroke someone's face with a riding crop, that's gonna be... People don't do that for non-sexual reasons, I don't think.
Yeah, cause it's not like torture, cause it's also, just like a weird power thing.
Yeah, it's
ain't any horses in this episode.
No! This guy just has a riding crop just so we can just do whatever he did to that guy's face with it.
Yeah. No, this will also not be the first time that, like, weirdly suggestive riding crops show up in Man from U.N.C.L.E, so...
And not the last time.
Yeah.
I guess we could read it as if he's a sadist, because afterwards they actually beat Stefan up, and he's watching, and he's striking his own hand with this crop, and that's very weird as well. He definitely gets a kick out of it. Out of torturing people and making them uncomfortable.
So what I'm hearing is basically, let's defame the dead a little bit here. Alan Caillou gets off on BDSM.
Well, maybe not himself, but his character certainly does.
So the moral of the story is that, yes, Alan Caillou, the writer, actually also appears as an actor in this episode, and not in a, like, super minor role like when all the writers show up at a party in...
it's not a cameo, it's actually a major role.
Yeah.
So, it's an interesting role, and I feel like there was somewhere else I was going with this, but I've forgotten what it was. So Alan Caillou is in this episode. That's where I was going with this.
Yeah, and I don't actually remember if you mentioned that actually Stefan was the one who wanted to sell Emil out because he was afraid for himself, and it makes the whole episode pretty interesting because Clara obviously loves him a lot. I mean, he's her husband, but he is absolutely not trustworthy. So it's a funny episode because it's like filled with people who are not acting in honorable ways, I would say. Something like that. The only people who were acting in normal ways were Napoleon, Ilya, Clara, and the Romani people. And the rest of the cast are just bastards.
Yeah. It's interesting. I wrote down something like, maybe I didn't. Oh, no, I did. My very last note was just, Stefan is, frankly, a twat. He's really, like, I mean, Clara doesn't make a super strong impression on me, but, like, she deserves better than this guy who's like, I'd sell you out for a single slice of bologna.
Oh.
And basically, the character who replaces Stefan is more interesting than Stefan himself.
Yeah.
I agree with that.
Me too.
But he's also very nasty, so it's like so many people in this episode act in very predatory ways. It's weird, I would say.
Yeah, there's a lot of just sort of needless aggression that goes on.
Oh yeah, like destroying that poor woman's mandolin.
Yeah.
Like, is that really necessary?
I wrote that down too. Although I didn't recognize it as a mandolin because I'm an idiot, so I just wrote, that poor guitar!
I only recognize it as a mandolin because I play the mandolin, so I could recognize it. But I understand, like, a lot of people don't know what one looks like.
I don't know what any instruments look like. I have never seen an instrument in my life.
Not even when he goes to the dentist and they're operating on you? Those are instruments.
I have seen surgical instruments, but nothing else.
So I think something interesting about how like this whole case was like this whole mission was unrelated to U.N.C.L.E. itself. I think this shows like almost like a turning point in like how like Napoleon and Elia recognize U.N.C.L.E. because like I remember like the intro for like the first few episodes where Elia was saying, "I do what I'm told by our chief." Remember that?
It actually starts with Napoleon saying like I'm part of the enforcement agency, and I do and I go where I'm told by our chief Waverly, and Elia repeats it. He says, "I also."
Yes,
it's very interesting, and
yeah,
it goes
and
back
in
to
this episode. And this episode's just like, let's just Napoleon, do your thing.
Yeah, I think in particular thinking about one of the things I mentioned when we talked about the shark affair is this whole idea of like, to what extent is U.N.C.L.E. right, and to what extent is U.N.C.L.E. sort of controlling their lives, and is that appropriate, is not something that's ever really made like text in the series, but it is something that I think is a subtextual theme, and that a bunch of episodes sort of like they investigated in kind of a cautious way, I feel like, because there is a little bit of like an anti-law and order sentiment if you take it to its final conclusion, which is kind of the last lines of the series. But there is definitely a sense that like there's some minor concern that perhaps U.N.C.L.E. is making Napoleon and Elia make decisions that they would not necessarily make if they were on their own.
That's interesting. I mean, like, I didn't actually quite thought of it this way. But if you put it this way, it's interesting that they don't even like tell Waverly that they are going on this weird adventure together. And if they were completely secure in their jobs, they would probably, because they would be just like, we're gonna rest here for a couple more days, but they don't tell anything to anybody. So it is funny.
Yeah.
I guess maybe because there's such amazing agents, even though they aren't really, but like in the universe they are supposed to be. Because they're such amazing agents, I guess even if they do something that's like technically they're not supposed to do, or they're supposed to go back to New York, but they're staying like in Rome, and then they go into like Terbouf to go on this mission. I guess maybe because they're such good agents, not that Uncle just keeps his sort of respect for them. Of course, I'm not saying they're actually good agents. I'm saying that in universe they're supposed to be.
Yeah, I would agree with that. There's some kind of subtext here in terms of like their relationship to Uncle, but it is subtext. It's not ever like we're not given an answer.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And also this episode is of course written by an actual ex-spy, so it's interesting that he makes them do things that they weren't supposed to do.
Basically,
That's really interesting too.
Yeah. Basically,
particularly considering like one of our complaints about Gyoko Piano, which also is Caillou, was that the plot didn't really make any sense, and we kind of joked like, "Oh, was this what you did when you were a spy, Alan?" Whereas this one it's not only much more tightly plotted, but it does seem to make more sense in terms of sort of the established universe as well. So there's definitely. It makes me question his writing. Like, what happened in Gyoko Piano that, like, caused him to completely lose the plot threads? Like...
Yeah, that sometimes happens to writers that are otherwise good. Like, they'll be so determined to make a turd crap. They'll be so determined to make, like, a turd good that they'll keep polishing it and polishing it and polishing it, but it's overall still a turd. But you can't let go of it because you put so much effort into it. I've definitely experienced this before.
You darlings.
Yeah.
Also, Gyoko Piano and Quadripartite were both pretty early in season 1, so maybe actually producers worked on them, and that's why they became different from what they were supposed to be, because maybe you had other ideas about Uncle and everything, and Samuel, he had his own ideas that were very strong, and he had to enforce them. So there is a possibility that they just thought about it maybe and had to rewrite it more than it was supposed to be.
Yeah.
But
it's hard to know how much of anything is executive meddling.
Yeah, but
that's a good point.
It's interesting to think about these things because the show is created by many people. It's not like one writer does it. Writes the script and it's it. Because many other people work on the script as well. And
yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, because film and television is a collaborative art.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And maybe in this episode he was able to write what he wanted to write. Without getting Uncle involved and everything. And it was like a later episode, so maybe it wasn't as closely overviewed and things.
He may have had more creative freedom.
Yeah.
Yeah, that makes sense.
And I'm not saying that maybe like Sam Rolfe was a bad influence on his script, but like sometimes too much supervision is bad.
Yeah.
Unless you're Anne Rice.
Whoa, that took a turn.
Sorry, I just was thinking about how there are some authors who, upon becoming very famous, were like, hey, what if I don't have an editor anymore? And that was not a good choice.
Yeah.
Oh, I thought you were talking about how she's like, no, fan fiction.
Yeah.
No. I was talking about the fact that she fired her editor in, like, 1994.
Oh, it sounds like such a bad idea.
Yeah.
I didn't know that.
And,
young writers, don't fire your editor.
I mean,
The editors play an important role.
the whole problem with the 50 Shades of Grey movies was that they weren't edited by anyone.
Oh yeah, because it's like S.L. James like had like way. I think she had like way too much control
Yeah.
over the movies. It's E.L. James, not S.L. James. Oh my god, I don't know my 50
No.
Shades of Grey
I know
author. Wow.
absolutely nothing about 50 Shades of Grey other than the fact that the books were based on Twilight fanfic and that Callum Keith Rennie, which is to say Ray Kowalski from Due South, plays her dad, I think, in the movies. And just the idea of being cast to play, you're gonna be the dad in this sex dungeon film. I guess you gotta pay the bills.
They have to keep it. I haven't seen them personally, but they have to keep it R-rated. It's not like full on like.
I mean, I also haven't seen it, but I watched like 100 reviews of it because it's very interesting.
Yeah. Mm.
I have not watched reviews of it. I'm good. I don't need that in my life.
I mean,
I think maybe you're better for it.
I also have watched like 500 reviews of Cats, and I haven't seen Cats, and I'm not gonna see Cats.
Oh yeah, I'm scared of that movie. I think Cats is something that should never have been made into a movie. Like it just needs to stay on stage. That's where it should be, not a movie.
Yeah.
There's a really great recording
I
of
have
the
seen-
like 1994 Cats British production of the stage play, and that's all you need.
Yeah, I haven't seen this recording, but like when I watched the trailer for the movie, I was so disturbed by how they looked. I felt physically sick.
Yeah, honestly, me too. But we should go back to Terbuff or Terboof or whatever.
Yeah.
I could also just sing all of Cats for you. There's a man over there.
Yeah, like I gotta clarify that I don't hate the musical, but the movie makes me very disturbed.
Oh yeah, 100%.
That's how I feel too. It's all the digital fur technology. Like no, you
I
don't
don't
need
like
digital
that.
fur technology.
Yeah.
Don't like that at all. No digital fur technology.
Yeah, so basically the whole thing that we were talking about is that sometimes writers need supervision, but sometimes it's too much.
Yeah. Yup. That's why
Yeah.
the fact that TV is collaborative is so interesting, because, you know, you get moments of absolute brilliance from collaboration, and then you have other times where the collaboration becomes just a too many cooks in the kitchen situation. So,
Yeah.
I mean, even the best show, even the best season of the best show is going to have some episodes that are going to be better than others because of that collaborative nature of it. You're not having just one person who is, you know, you're not having just one person who's sort of the brains behind it, I guess.
Yeah, that's why I normally find it easier to watching British TV shows, because they are shorter and they have like more supervision, I would say, than American shows. But with the Man from Uncle, it works okay because for some reason most of the episodes are of a normal quality, I would say.
I feel like also, you know, Men from U.N.C.L.E. isn't necessarily a show that, like, totally takes itself seriously, and that makes it better. Like,
Oh yeah, I've actually even like Man from U.N.C.L.E. definitely does not take itself completely seriously at all times, and like I almost like feel like I've read some fan fiction where it becomes way darker and edgier with like actual like blood and gore, and I'm like, this feels so wrong when there's friggin' Napoleon Solo right here. Like Napoleon Solo has never seen gore.
Yeah.
I'm picturing, like, Napoleon, just, like, standing, staring at his hands covered in blood, being like, time to quote an inappropriate nursery rhyme.
So bad.
That's exactly how it would be.
Yeah, speaking of his quirks, in this episode he said home James for the first time. and I mean,
he said what? I'm sorry, I missed that.
I missed it too, sorry.
He said home James, and it's like he uses this phrase a couple more times in the show. It's like a normal timey meme, I would say. I mean, Napoleon was using memes all the time.
Oh! I think modern Napoleon would totally run a meme account.
Yeah. And speaking of memes, this episode has a very weird instance in which both Napoleon and Lydia at some point they basically beat up some bad guys and they steal their trousers.
Yeah. And I was literally, when I heard that, I was like, oh my god, are they going to show the guy stripping? And then it cuts away. I'm like, oh.
They are not.
Yeah, this is 60s TV. They're not.
but it's so weird though. Like, what was that?
They're just stealing their pants, and then the guys are just left to run around in their underwear.
Yeah.
I mean, isn't that the best way to incapacitate someone, is to make it so that, that when they're walking around, they're going to have to expose themselves in an embarrassing way?
Yeah. It's actually a pretty funny thing, and yeah, it works. But at the same time, it's very unnecessary, I would say, because it just feels weird. And it never comes up again in the show, so it's like, in this episode they did.
Yeah.
Maybe they're just like that on their vacations. Just stealing men's trousers. On their vacations.
I feel like
there's
one of my other favorite things about this episode is the entirety of Ilya going undercover with the Roma.
Oh yeah.
oh my god.
They decide that basically Ilya needs to that they need to figure out where Emil is, and so in order to do this, they're going to have Ilya gain the trust of the Roma by pretending to be Roma. And as usual, of course, they pick the blondest man in the world to be an ethnic minority. And so
there's some blonde ethnic minorities,
yep,
like the Sami people are blonde.
That is true. I don't think there's an episode in which they ask Ilya to be Sami. So they send him undercover, and I think my very favorite thing about this, aside from his drinking, is that every time they ask
he chugs.
He totally chugs. But I feel like every time they ask Ilya to go undercover, the way he does it is to make a spirited speech. So, like, Ilya usually is, like, pretty, like, low-key about things, but whenever he's being asked to go undercover, he's like, and now it is time for me to talk about unity and brotherhood and justice. And it's like, every single time it's like, okay, this is really obviously someone who is not part of this subgroup they're pretending to be part of. Like, he is so obviously a cop. You know?
it's like when you're in prison and then like your cellmate's undercover cop and he acts really exaggerated, constantly swearing and talking about all the drugs and it's super fake sounding. That's Ilya.
Yeah, exactly. Like, it's not entrapment, I swear.
I mean, Ilya isn't actually trying to entrap anyone, so it's it's more okay than that, I would say.
But one of the other things he does, other than making a very spirited speech, is that he asks for a bottle of Slivovits, which is not like beer. Which is to say, repeatedly in this episode, people chug this beverage, and I don't drink, but from what I've read, that seems like a real bad idea. Like,
Yeah.
if you're chugging Slivovits, you're gonna feel real sick. So he takes this bottle and he just like slams the whole thing back, and all of the like Roma and the spa are watching him like, oh my god, what is wrong with this guy? But I do have to say, is it weird that I found it kind of hot when he was drinking the liquid?
Oh, I did too.
Okay, good, because like I was like, this is weird. Like it also kind of runs down his face.
I think there's a little bit of sexual imagery you could get from that, so I understand why.
So, what I'm hearing here is, in conjunction with my, like, blackout last week or the week before when we were talking about, like, cigarette lighting, for some reason, I just have a thing for people sticking stuff in their mouths.
Oh my god.
Gosh!
You laughed so intensely, your microphone just went... You're like...
So, he chugs the Slivovits and it runs down his chin, and he makes a spirited speech, and then the moment he leaves, all of the Roma are like, yeah, he's a spy. That's clearly a spy.
You know, actually, going back into this whole idea about like Ilya like being every ethnicity, whereas actually there's a really like famous, at least in the fandom, there's this really famous line that Ilya says that I've seen everywhere, that when he said it, I was like, that's the line. He says to Napoleon while he's on a boat with him, it's a handicap, isn't it, being so obviously American? And when he said that, I was like, oh my god, because this is almost being like, there's two types of people, Americans and non-Americans. It's because like Napoleon's all like, he's like the clumsy, like super American guy, and then Ilya is all sleek and svelte and not American, so he can be any other type of person that's not American, and I just found it kind of funny thinking of it that way.
So, I gotta tell you about the fact that in Russia, especially, I mean, if Ilya was from Ukraine, the Soviet Union, there is a lot of Romani people in that part of like Russia or the Soviet Union. So basically, there is a lot of exposure to that culture, I would say, and arguably there's also a lot of mixed people, because obviously people mix when they interact a lot. So the whole thing when Ilya was pretending to be Romani wasn't very like cringy for me as a person from Russia, because it's something that people actually do. basically,
Oh.
because you know how there are many Roman songs in Russia. They were especially popular before the revolution. They are all heavily influenced by Romani songs. So basically,
Oh yeah, isn't Dark Eyes one of them?
yes, there are many songs. There are many cultural mixing in this like. In this way, basically, there were also many books about Romani people, especially like in the early Soviet Union when they were brought into attention by writers such as Maxim Gorky, and basically, it's like almost a part of Russian culture. But I guess it's
That's
applied
really interesting to hear about.
to all of the Eastern Europe because there are many Romanian people who travel through it. I mean, at least in the past there were. At the moment, probably also because, I mean, many Romanian people are still leading this almost nomadic life. So, I mean, in the USA, you're probably not exposed to them at all, but in Europe, there are many places that are culturally influenced by them. So basically,
Yeah, like I actually like here we only like ever think of like Roma people as like this is really bad to say it, but like we think of them as like we think of them as being like exotic because we don't really see them here. So like I'm not saying like I do, but like the overall like American like cultural perception of them.
Yeah,
So I
it's
think
the
I think
American cultural perception of Roma is, I think, less based in reality and much more based on the fictional depictions of them that we've seen.
yeah, definitely. Like we definitely think that like we have this sort of fantasy idea of what they actually are, which is very different than how their culture actually is.
yeah. But like there is a lot of racism towards them in Europe as well because obviously they are seen as foreign everywhere, and still people were trying to understand them. Like if you look at writers such as Prosper Merriman, but he's not like a good example because he was. He was the guy who wrote Carmen. So basically, Europeans were always interested in Romani people, and like if you read some Gorky or watch some like there were even TV shows about Romani people in Russia. I mean, in the Soviet Union. So basically, for me, seeing Ilya pretend to be Romani was like it makes more sense than it would to you. I would say, probably.
Actually now I think about I honestly like think that like the decision for like Ilya to like I think the decision for Ilya to like pretend to be like Romani or like just in general like pretend to be someone that's not like a Russian man or Ukrainian, I should say. It's kind of hard to explain because it's like he says he went to college in Ukraine as a boy, and then like the parent refers to him as Russian. It's kind of confusing, but you know what I mean.
Yeah.
I mean, it's all the Soviet Union, man.
Yeah, it's all the same. So everyone in the Soviet Union is the same. No, I'm kidding.
We're all comrades here.
Yep. I think that it's just. I think they're going based on, personality and cultural knowledge and not so much looks.
Yeah, absolutely.
Agreed.
Especially as Alanka, you were actually British, so, I mean, he was more aware of these things in Europe than, an American writer would be, so, I mean, he is still pretty problematic in his writing, but at least he had some experience with this.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Yeah, it does.
So basically, Yeah, as Hannah said, tagging Slivovits is probably not a good idea because it's from what I have read, it's like plum brandy, uh, and brandy's pretty heavy.
Maybe they water it down a lot.
Maybe.
This is the resort Slivovits.
Yeah, I mean, they act like it's some sort of like wine, I would say.
Yeah, because there's not just the scene of Ilya chugging it. Later, there is a scene where Napoleon and Ilya pretty quickly get captured by Emil's friends because, as mentioned, Ilya is immediately pegged as a spy. Like they realize instantaneously that this guy is like suspicious.
Ilya wasn't actually captured.
Oh, you're correct. So Napoleon is captured when he comes in to the bar to meet with them, and he thinks that Ilya has prepped them, and Ilya feels that he has prepped them. And so he comes in, and first off, he's super obnoxious here. He comes in, he literally yells, "Yoo-hoo!" and starts, like, banging on the counter. And it's like, how to make friends and influence people. Be terrible. So, anyway, he is captured and thrown in the, basically like the meat cellar, and, so he contacts Ilya and asks him to help him escape, and the two of them end up, chugging more liquor together while they're waiting to meet with, Walter and, the other guy, who are supposedly going to show them where Emil is. And there's a very cute scene where the two of them are sitting like very, very close and drinking heavily while they're on the job.
The main like unusual thing about Slivovits is that it's made from plums. So maybe we could like say that it's a plum wine or something like that.
Yeah, maybe, yeah. I mean, I don't think it's a great idea to chug plum wine either. But, but I don't know. What was I going to say? I wrote down that the whole scene where Napoleon asks Ilya to come help him is really cute because this feels like a point in the series at which you're starting to get the idea that they really do legitimately like each other. Yeah. So, like, the first half of season 1, there is definitely a sense that they're still kind of feeling each other out. Like, that there's some kind of, like, I don't know how well I know you, I don't know how well I trust you. And, like, they trust each other in terms of, like, the job, but it doesn't really feel like they have, like, a solid friendship. Up until this episode kind of feels like one of the turning points. And, like, the way they're bantering with each other feels much more familiar. And, like, they're, like, just on the border of basically, like, being able to say aloud, like, hey, I like you. You're a good dude. But not quite. And yeah, they trap Napoleon in this weird meat cellar, and, like, there's, like, all these hanging sausages, and they, like, stick him next to a wheel of cheese and some onions and stuff. But my favorite part is that they don't, like, tie him up or anything, they just, like, sexily toss him on a table. I know. And what I mean by like, that is he's, like, posed like he's going to be drawn on a piano.
And also, like, why would they put him in there with food? Like, he would just get hungry and just eat all the sausages and cheese. Like, it seems like a waste of resources.
They come downstairs and, like, Napoleon is just sitting there licking his fingers, being like...
And then he basically does, because actually, when, like, there are many people who threw him there, like, immediately, and his brother come down to the cellar. They think that he escaped, because they see that, like, the bars are broken and everything, but actually, Napoleon and Ilya are just sitting in the corner drinking and eating.
Also, I mentioned earlier that they pronounce Emil like 30 different ways. So Emil is also Walter. So there's a character we're introduced to part of the way through the episode named Walter, who's one of the Roma who runs the restaurant. And Walter mentions that he knows Emil. And later on we find out that actually he knows him because he is him. But in the meantime, some of the ways that they pronounce Emil are... The cop who first attempts to arrest him at the beginning of the episode calls him Emil. Then, let's see, someone in the Alan Caillou stroking someone with a riding crop scene calls him Emil. And then my favorite is that someone else in that scene calls him Emil. And... I like kept having to come up with new ways to try to spell this name because every time someone said it, it was different. It reminded me of like early 90s or like mid 90s RPGs, like translated RPGs, video games, where like clearly none of the voice actors had been told, like there was no pronunciation Bible. So like they'll be like, that's Hitoshi, Hitoshi, like, and everyone pronounces it differently, except that this is just like a 4-letter French name, and I don't understand why no one can pronounce Emil.
I would also like to talk about the scene in which Ilya gets stopped by cops.
Yeah, I really like that scene. It's very interesting.
Because, Ilya gets stopped by cops and he says that he's just a fisherman, and they find that he has, like, a Swiss Army knife, and also, of course, his communicator disguised as a cigarette pack. And they basically steal both things, and he's like, please give them back to me, I need them for my work. And they don't, and he just beats them up. and he gets his stuff back. But it's like funny.
It's an interesting scene both because of, Ilya just beating people up, but also the way that they ask him, like, he's not doing anything. He's just walking. And the people, the police officers who stop him just are like, we need to see your papers. And I feel like it's, I was kind of surprised by how on the nose that was. Like, that it just, for absolutely no reason, he's being stopped just because they feel like it. And then on top of that, like, Ilya, the way he responds to them, like, he's pretty calm in the beginning, and he gets progressively sort of not less calm, but just, like, slightly louder as he continuously repeats the phrase, I want my cigarettes and my knife. I would like my cigarettes and my knife, please. Can I have my knife and my cigarettes back? And, like, he just repeats the same idea, like, 6 or 7 times as they're just like, what is this for? What's this knife all about? Why are these cigarettes weird? And, like, then when they won't give them back, he finally is like, okay, and then he beats them up.
That just goes to show that they live in a police state, because in police states, like, people who work for the government are very entitled, and they basically do this kind of thing. They just rob people in broad daylight.
Yeah, that's kind of what I meant by, like, it was surprisingly on the nose. Like, I feel like Americans have a tendency, and maybe this is partially because it was written by Alan Caillou and not by an American, but Americans, I think, have a tendency to assume that even in a police state, the police are not going to do anything themselves against
Oh!
So, the fact that they, like, literally just rob him
That's
is
so naive.
interesting in terms of like a 1960s American television show showing like the corruption of the police. And I think that that's part of why Americans don't recognize some of the things that happen with police in America now, because there's this thought that no, the police are good, they're on the side of right. So I was surprised by how sort of blunt that scene was. And that they just literally rob him and he's in the right for beating them up.
Yeah, fight the police. Oh my god, no. I wasn't supposed to share.
Okay, so there's a song that's it's F the Police, and very famously no, I'm sorry, I'm thinking of two different songs. I'm combining two different songs. There's an F the Police song and there's also an F the System song. And the song that is F the System, they released a version of it that was censored. And so instead of saying F the System, the chorus is just someone saying the system! The system! The system! Anyway, anytime I think about the concept of fighting the man or the police, I just in my head think, the system! The system! The system! So that's my contribution.
Basically, Ilya was vibing this whole episode because he was in his element. So basically, what other scenes do you remember? Like, what would you...
Oh, this is... Well, okay, something at the very end of the episode, like, when Clara and Napoleon, like, are about to be shot down by a firing squad, Ilya just rolls in this military disguise as Major Kuryanik, wearing this absolutely massive military uniform.
It's so big!
I know, he's like swimming in the fabric, and like he gives him like, it makes his shoulders look so unnaturally wide because it has like shoulder pads, and it's like a zoot suit.
It's like there's like an 80s music video where someone has an enormous suit. Like, it's like the person is practically a cube. and that's like the look that Ilya is going for here, is like, I am a human cube.
Yeah. Did they not have like another military uniform that was like an appropriate size? Like, just were like, oh, Ilya's just gonna be wearing the baggiest military uniform ever. Or maybe it's an intentional decision to like suggest that it was like he just rushed and just found some random uniform and put it on. But I don't know if they were thinking that. I don't know if they were thinking that hard about it.
He stole this uniform from Major Whitechuk. Don't you remember?
No.
Major Whitechuk is like this guy who was pretending to be Clara's husband, and
oh yeah.
He is an abnormal sized man.
Oh, we're so mean to Ilya. Just because he's a teeny tiny little man.
I'm kidding.
I mean,
so small and adorable.
Ooh, woo. Small bean. Ooh. I can say all this about him because I'm short too, so like it's fine. I'm shorter than him.
And I'm shorter. I'm shorter than Logan.
I was gonna say, Logan, you're the tallest of all of us. We're all making fun of Ilya being tiny, and we're all shrimps ourselves. It's just like a bunch of puppies being like, that puppy's smaller than me, I'm gonna fight him!
Yeah, but like also actually, yeah, he's bigger than all of us.
Yeah.
So his giant uniform, I think, also comes from there's a whole thing where Emil is about to get on the boat, and so they've been holding up this boatman the whole time in the episode. Like, this boatman keeps being delayed from his rendezvous with the other boatman, and Ilya keeps being like, we can't hold him any longer, and they keep holding him longer. But finally, at this point in the episode, like, Emil is ready to go on the boat. They gotta get going. It is a situation where, like, time is of the essence, and they do not have it on their side, and at the last minute, Ilya is like, yeah, okay, Emil, you get on the boat with your friends, good luck, bye, I'm gonna go find Napoleon. And it's interesting because, it's another example of how the mission always comes second, and finding and saving each other always comes first. And I think it's particularly interesting in this case because the mission isn't even one that was assigned by Uncle. It's a mission that they chose to take, and even then, that is superseded by their need to take care of each other. But he rushes off, and Emil and the other Roma are like, I guess we need to help this guy. And so they end up coming with him. And there's this super cute little moment where the boatman, who has been, like, listening to this and looking kind of grumpy, just shrugs in the background, like, if all of you want to be trapped here in this police state, I'm gonna go. And then he doesn't, because they end up getting on the boat later.
Yeah. So, yeah, the whole scene in which Napoleon and Clara were captured was pretty interesting as well, because, like, it was during the night, and they were basically, like, jumped. It also happened after Stefan escaped, helped by Ilya and other people, and basically he got to his house. And then he was captured by, like, a half dozen of policemen. By the way, I gotta mention that these policemen, they actually wear, like, German helmets for some reason. Yeah.
Because they had them on the MGM lot.
Yeah, probably, because I had to check, because, like, I used to be able to distinguish helmets by their shapes, but now I forgot exactly how they look. But yeah, these seem to be German helmets. So basically, they have, like, very Soviet colored uniforms plus German helmets. It's interesting. And basically, Napoleon and Clara get captured because they were plotting to let Emil escape and help Stefan as well. And Clara is in her nightgown, and Napoleon says, like, let her put on a dress at least, or something like that. And later she has, like, a bathrobe, I guess.
Bathrobe, dress, same thing.
Yeah. Well, at least she's not in her nightgown when she was about to get shot. Yeah. So, police in this episode is shown as pretty violent and bad. But it's also like Eastern European police, so it's basically like, haha, these countries have bad police. Yeah. It's like it's interesting, but it's also not very subversive, I would say, because people were mostly aware that people in other countries had some problems with the police and other stuff, like, but also it might be connected to the character from Gioco Piano. Remember, there was a policeman who was supposed to be, like, the most honest policeman in Baruqua.
Yeah, the guy who's like, I'm unbribable.
Yeah,
Praise everyone twice over.
Yeah. So maybe Alan Caillou just didn't like the police, or maybe he had a grudge against like foreign police because he was a spy.
Ooh, that's interesting.
Yeah. So he often writes foreign police as very bad.
That is interesting. And seems like it would be in character for some of the other writing and just general, like, what it would be like to be a British spy during that time period.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, definitely.
So later, they basically hijack a car and they run away with Ide in his huge uniform. And there was a really funny scene in which, like, Clara and Napoleon are actually handcuffed together, and they are sitting in the back of the car. But at some point, Ilya just sits down between them. And they are handcuffed.
It just seems like it would be so painful to have someone sit on your handcuffed hands.
Yeah. But also, like, was completely necessary. It's just so funny.
Ilya's jealous.
You are going to pay for your attraction to Clara.
Yeah. he like, I'm gonna break you up at least somewhere. There's also a promo photo of it, so I can find it if you can talk about something in the meantime.
There's also a scene near the end where, God, I don't remember what they were actually doing. I didn't write it down. But there's a moment where Ilya does something acrobatic and heroic, and Napoleon turns and tells the nearest other human, Ilya's been wanting to do that since he saw Errol Flynn play Robin Hood, which I just think is an adorable.
Oh yeah, quote. Like Ilya jumps down from like a treetop.
Yeah. And I suspect that this is a situation where Napoleon is, kind of being a troll, and, like, he's coming up with this off the top of his head, but I really like the idea that actually Ilya has told him that, like, Errol Flynn was his hero as a child.
And it was a cute scene because he was, like, grinning with all his mouth, and he was so happy to tell Clara about it, and Clara was like, huh? Clara was like, I'm not very interested in this information. So now you can see the promo picture in which Ilya is sitting between them when they are
in his gigantimous coat.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm like, poor Clara, she looks so uncomfortable in this picture.
Her actress appears again in a later Man from U.N.C.L.E. episode, and frankly, I think she does a better job in the later one. But she does come back for another episode, not as the same character, as a different character. But yeah, the picture here of her, she's looking at the camera like, help. David McCallum is sitting on my hand. What is happening? And it's entertaining to think that, she showed up again later and probably at that point was, more used to their nonsense.
So basically it was a pretty fun episode, and I don't even know what else can we mention about it. I'm
trying to think. I feel like
there's got to be
There's a point at which Napoleon knock someone out by like Vulcan death gripping them, and I thought that was really funny. There's a lot of, you know, very suspect fighting in Man from U.N.C.L.E, but it's not usually quite Star Trek level of suspect. And there's a point where Napoleon comes up behind a guy and just like squeezes his shoulder and the guy faints.
So, Man from U.N.C.L.E logic is that you can just do like one like little chop to the back and then they fall over and faint.
Yup. It's amazing how fiction has convinced people that people can just be knocked out easily, and also that, like, that won't cause further problems later on. Like, 99% of the things that cause you to black out, like, they're going to hurt you in other ways as well. And so, like, when, you know, the good guys and things are always going through and being like, and then I knocked out 55 soldiers on my way here, it's like, oh, at least half of those guys probably have brain damage.
I think, like, actually, I've seen, like, there's other examples of, like, things in Man from U.N.C.L.E that some people accept as fact, even though it actually is totally a part of fiction. And, like, for example, like, darts or like powder or something that can like instantly like tranquilize or like knock out someone.
Yeah,
like
no.
It doesn't work like that. Like, even tranquilizer darts take a bit, like it take a while to kick in. Like, it's not like you just boom shoot them and then boom they're knocked out.
That actually was a hilarious scene in season 3. In which Ilya hit a huge guy with a tranquilizer dart, and he started counting down like seconds when he would get knocked out, and it was very funny because it took longer than it was supposed to take, I think.
Yeah, it's a good scene. Ilya ends up kind of like not exactly riding this guy around, but like it's a very sort of classic like tiny guy big guy fight. and so he's like being dragged around by this giant of a man, and he just keeps counting because he's not being knocked out by the tranquilizer. It's very funny.
Yeah. Well, can you say anything about like Major Wycheck or some other bad guys from this episode?
Yeah, my one note was I tune out every time the husband or the fake husband talks.
Yeah.
Honestly, I relate.
But yeah, Major Wycheck was very unpleasant to look at because he was like very sleazy and I guess a bit rapey, I would say, in his demeanor.
Yeah.
And as a bad guy, it's of course a success because he was very disgusting.
Yeah, the Wycheck is he's very aggressive with Clara, and he doesn't explicitly do anything like he does not like sexually assault her, but it's very much a situation where he is implying like I have a level of power over you that you simply cannot. There's no way you can fight back, and he kind of uses the leverage of her husband against her in terms of kind of saying, like, anything I tell you you're going to be doing, and it's left unclear exactly what that means, but it's not a good implication. Like, there's definitely there's a power dynamic there that is very uncomfortable.
Yeah, and also, like, when Colonel Moresco was actually appointing him to pretend to be Clara's husband, he asked him, like, you like Clara, right? And he said, yes, like, I find her very attractive, and it was very, very unpleasant.
And Moresco is like, good, because I find Stefan attractive. Time for me to touch him with my riding crop.
Yeah.
there was also like a bad guy in sunglasses who didn't do much, but he kind of looked like a worse version of Macy Good. Do you know Macy Good?
Not sure.
I don't think I'm real. I don't really know actors and actresses, so I'm just like, what?
Okay.
Type the name.
Okay.
Because I've been having in and outs for not volume, for audio. Matthew Good. No, I don't know Matthew Good. That is what I heard you say. I just don't know.
I thought you said Nancy Wood.
I'm looking up Matthew Good. Oh wow, I can't spell. Oh, he has a long face.
Yeah, he's a pretty popular British actor, I would say. So basically, there was a character who kind of looked like him, like a bit.
He looks very British.
Yeah. There also was a guy who was helping remind people, who was a policeman, but he pretended to be a loyal policeman, but he actually was sympathetic towards Romani. And it's interesting because he later came back to play mostly trash guys in this show, so he has a very familiar face to me, I would say, because I remember him from other episodes.
Yeah, it's interesting because he has a very, like, this is gonna sound really mean, but this actor has the kind of look of, I am an actor in the 60s and I am going to be cast as a German soldier for the entire time that I'm working as an actor.
Yeah.
And it's interesting because he does end up being I think actually the implication is that he is Roma, isn't it? That it's not just that he's sympathetic, but that he's undercover.
I think, well, didn't they say he was like half Roma?
Maybe.
Something like that, because they make some kind of comment about it, and anyway, he ends up helping them because of that, and but he totally has like a I'm gonna be cast as a Nazi forever kind of face, which is terrible.
Yeah, so I would like to ask actually Logan about what he thinks about uniforms in this episode.
Oh, it was awesome. There was so okay, I gotta say, like, it wasn't as good as the last one, because the last one had more young men, and I'm young, so I like young men. But I'm not shaming people who are into age gaps as long as it's not inappropriate. But like, that's not really my thing. But
Logan's not into the foxy grandpa scene.
No! Let's not ship Loverly.
Curse. Now, what if it's Hugh Grant Waverly?
I don't know what he looks like.
You do know what he looks like. We watched the movie.
I didn't know which one was Hugh Grant.
Who was Waverly?
I didn't know who Waverly was.
Well, that would make it hard to answer that question, I guess.
I mean, that just goes to show how much Logan loves the movie.
Yeah, I actually literally couldn't even figure out who Waverly was, which is
God.
really bad, but like...
But what about Williams?
Yeah, and I had a hard time telling apart Napoleon and Ilya in the reboot. I'm talking about the 2015 reboot, by the way. I had a hard time telling them apart when they weren't in the same scene.
Yeah, we did a stream. Was it yesterday?
No, I think it was a couple of
No,
days.
day before
No,
that.
it was Wednesday. Okay, so we did a stream with some Mongol fans of the reboot movie. Most of us hadn't seen it before, but Eartha had, and she was very unhappy about everything that was happening. If you're a fan of the movie, like I'm not trying to yuck your yum here, but it's kind of just a generic action movie with, like, the names stapled onto people's foreheads. There's nothing Napoleon-y about Napoleon, and there's nothing Ilya-y about Ilya. And
Henry Cavill said that he actually didn't even watch, like, Robert Vaughn's performance of Napoleon Solo, because he didn't want to steal another actor's performance. But I was like, you don't automatically steal another actor's performance just by watching it.
Maybe Henry Cavill is actually a robot, and when he observes something, it becomes part of him, and he's incapable of ejecting this knowledge.
Yeah, you just take, like, a Man from Uncle DVD and feed it into his, like, DVD slot, and then boom, he just has all the knowledge.
It's his mouth.
Yeah.
You just stick a DVD in Henry Cavill's mouth, and he's like, now I'm moving on.
Look, you think it actually would be, like, fantastic for any actor, I would say.
I'm not asking that he, like, exactly copy Robert Vaughn's acting. That's not what I would want.
Yeah.
That is someone's performance. But being able to look at his performance and realize, like, what he did well and maybe take some things from it while adding his own flair to it, instead of it being, like, completely divorced from the original character.
Yeah. I will say I will say the one thing that seemed kind of, as Eartha alluded to earlier, is there's an implication. No, there's not even an implication. If you have shipping goggles on, there's some interactions between much younger Waverly, who is Hugh Grant in the movie, and Napoleon that are, you could interpret them in a kind of shippy way. And so if you are into that, foxy grandpa thing, that could be your road in the 2015 movie. But it wasn't great. We'll put it that way. One of the things we all sort of noted in horror was that it's much whiter than the series, which isn't good.
Oh, yeah!
Because the series was made in the mid-60s, and, like, you'd think that maybe, just possibly, we'd have gotten a little bit better, but no, somehow they got worse.
Yeah.
And, like, don't even ask me questions about this movie, because it would take hours.
Oh yeah, we could have a whole episode devoted to just being salty about this movie if we wanted to.
But I actually don't think it's very good, because, like, I don't hate people who like this movie, and I understand.
Yeah.
I understand why they enjoy it, because it is enjoyable from a certain point of view. That's for sure. But for me, it just doesn't do anything. So I'm not a good person to talk to about this movie. And, like, none of us actually liked it, so it would be unfair, because we would only critique it and never say anything good.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, there's a few things I like about it, but it's not, like, actual plot or character stuff. It's stuff like cinematography, and the music is kind of a vibe. Even though the music's not the best choice for 1963, it is still pretty cool sounding, so, like, it's something.
I feel like I could totally see how it could work as a if you had never heard of, seen, etc., Man from U.N.C.L.E, that, like, I can see how it could have been some people's gateway drug.
Yeah.
But coming from the opposite perspective, like, I hadn't seen the movie until I had seen the whole series.
Same for me.
It felt like a serial numbers filed off version of the show. Like, the show is...
Yeah.
It's weird. Like, the show is weird. There's a lot of things about the show that are very odd. And it's a big part of its charm is that it's kind of strange. Like, there's the characters are eccentric and the plots are a little outlandish, and there are some things that, like, quirks about the series that are sort of consistent but odd. And I feel like that's a big part of its charm, at least for me, is that it's just a little off. And the movie is very sort of generic spy action, and I feel like because of that, it feels just like they shouldn't have used the Man from U.N.C.L.E name for that purpose. Like, I don't know what they gained from using it.
Yeah, even like if we look at the main characters, Napoleon and Lydia from the original show are super weird. Like, they're also not very tall.
Yeah, they're way too big in the movie.
Yeah.
Way too big.
I like him.
Oh yeah, like I'm not a big fan. Like I'm not a big fan of 6'5", like Ilya.
Yeah.
Like, literally, like that's like I think of Ilya's. I think of spies as being, like, small and compact, and they can, like, hide easily. And Ilya falls into that category. Like, it's like that's like, but like when you're like 6'5", that's so tall, especially for the '60s. You stand out so much.
I feel like movie Ilya, who also has a very thick and not... I mean, I don't know, Eartha. You're better for judging his Russian accent, but it didn't strike me as great.
Yeah.
Like, it was very much a, like, cartoonish kind of Russian accent. So, you know, like, movie Ilya is like, hello? I am not KGB agent. I am very large. I will not beat you with stick now. And it's kind of like, this man's real suspicious.
Sounds very accurate, actually. And, like, for me, the show is pretty important because as a pretty short person, I can relate to Ilya being small.
Me too.
It's fun, like, making fun of him for being short because I'm also short.
So they really legitimately are just so dang cute.
Yeah.
Like,
Oh, yes.
like, I feel like I understand that, like, Henry Cavill and Armie Hammer are, like, attractive in a sort of, like, what is the word I'm looking for? Like, platonic sense? Like, it's like, yes, that is an attractive man, but, like, that kind of sort of bland leading man attractiveness just doesn't really do it for me. Like,
Yeah.
Me neither.
And,
like, I appreciate someone who has just a little more, like, facial character.
Me too.
And speaking, like, of Robert One, he doesn't have a perfect body type, let's say so. But he is very nice to look at, I would say. He's just pleasant to look at because he has, like, a very like, lively face, and he makes so many facial expressions. And he's so fun. And just,
You know,
like,
the thing about original, like, oh, sorry.
yeah, I mean, replacing him with almost anyone would be a downgrade. And Henry Cavill...
Yeah, I would agree with that. It's hard to follow up on... There's just certain... roles that really have been inhabited by their actors in
Yeah.
a way that makes it very, very hard to have anyone else do that role unless you're doing a very different interpretation, and it would have to be a very different interpretation that itself has a lot of character.
Yeah. And
Yeah.
it just wasn't.
Yup. But yeah, it was a good time watching it, with other Mongol people.
Yeah, it was
regardless of whether it was actually an enjoyable movie.
And, actually, I find it really interesting when, like, reading opinions of people who do enjoy the movie, because I've noticed most of them don't seem to be people who, like they don't seem to be people who came from the original series.
Mm-hmm.
Like, they seem to be people that either, like, watch the original series afterwards, or they just never have, and they only have watched the movie, because they don't have that comparison points that we do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And, like, well, I mean, they do have that comparison point if they watch the show afterwards, but, like, they just get more, like, they might get more used to their first characterization of Napoleon and Ilya, so the original show might seem kind of odd to them.
And I mean, it is odd, but it's odd in a good way.
Yeah, it is. Yeah, I both think I think Napoleon and Ilya are both pretty attractive, but, like, in an approachable way, and not in like not in like a movie star like almost inhuman way. I'm not saying there isn't people that look like that, but I think there's a lot more people in the world who look like Napoleon and Ilya than who look like Robert Vaughn and David McCallum than who look like Armie Hammer and Henry Cavill.
I feel like we talked about this not in the podcast, but just like on the internet many weeks ago, where I was talking about how, like, I miss, like, 1970s casting in movies where, like, you didn't have to be, like, spectacularly gorgeous to be the lead of something, and, like, that there were just, I feel like there was a greater diversity of, like, face shapes, and, like, not everybody had the same sort of, like, sculpted body and stuff like that either, and I feel like that's one of the things that I do also appreciate about the series, is there's sort of like it's a non-idealized kind of attractiveness that they have. It's like their personalities are part of what makes them attractive, and also just like, I don't know. It's like when you get to know someone, and when you get to know them, they become cuter to you.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think that's why, like, that's why, like, there's literally, like, people, like, who, like, have gotten into, like, the movie, and then, like, when they, like, and then when they see the original actors, they're like, oh, they're not hot, just because they don't know the characters.
Yeah.
And, like, they don't have, like, this perfectly sculpted movie star bodies.
Yeah, not everybody has the same weird 1970s fetish. Is that the word that I am using?
Yeah,
here?
I think that's a good word for it.
I don't know. I just feel like, let me be clear. I'm also saying this as someone who is, my husband has been described as a redheaded Roy Scheider. So my desire for a real 70s looking dude is apparently, like, it's a real problem.
But also, like, let's just say that having a super sculpted body is unnatural. Like, these are movie stars that are basically groomed this way, like horses.
Yeah, like, they're thoroughbreds. They're thoroughbreds about the race in the Kentucky Derby.
Yeah, basically, it's like that.
They're not just some random horse in a stable somewhere.
Yeah. And, like, if you try to write realistic fanfic about them, what would they be doing in their spare time? Like, working out?
Oh god, that's my problem every time I've ever tried to write anything about Batman. It's like, to be Batman, you have to spend, like, half of every day working out, and then when do you have time to fight crime?
Yeah. That's why my favorite Batman is Adam West.
Oh, yeah. Honestly, like, dad bod Batman, that's the right Batman.
See, Batman the Animated Series was, like, literally my very first fandom when I was, like, 9, and I didn't even know what a fandom was. And so, for me, Batman will always be a human triangle. Who is drawn the same way Bruce Timm draws all men, like a chip.
Yep, men are tortilla chips.
Yep. He draws one woman and one man, and that one woman is very attractive, and that one man is very attractive, and that's all that matters.
Yeah, I get that. I watched Batman the Animated Show like maybe 7 years ago or something like that, so I wasn't an actual child. But I enjoyed it. It's a good show, but still...
It is a good show.
But still, the 60s Batman is forever in my heart.
Adam West Batman is my second favorite Batman.
His villains were so much fun.
Oh, 100%.
Just
Calendar
fantastic.
Man.
Yeah.
The one that's themed for eggs. The egg-themed man.
Yeah. Egghead, I think, or he was played by Vincent Price.
Yep.
How is that?
Which is to say, Waverly's ex-boyfriend.
Oh, yep.
Yeah, basically, the main thing that came out from us watching the reboot again was shipping Napoleon and Waverly.
Wavolian
all the way.
Yeah.
But only Hugh Grant Wavolian.
Yeah, but it also...
You know, actually, I haven't found any actually, I looked on AO3 to see if there was Ilya/Waverly fanfiction, and this is only in the original canon, not reboot, and there is no Wavolian or Wavelia fanfiction.
Okay,
there was one fic that showed up under Waverly/Ilya, but I think it was mistagged because it wasn't actually any shipping action.
That was one of our Discord members found that as well and was posting excerpts of it, weren't they? And it ends with like, "You're like a son to me," and we were like, "Oh, yeah. I don't think this person knows what shipping is."
Maybe.
Unless you're into that. No, I'm kidding.
Yikes!
I'm kidding.
Oh, and here I was thinking, Wavolian only makes sense within the context of the 2015 movie because, it's really different getting together with your boss when your boss was not your boss like 10 minutes ago. It's very different getting together with your boss when your boss has been the head of this organization for like 50 years.
Yeah, the power imbalance. It's too much.
You gotta if you both became members of the organization at the same time, you can deal with this power imbalance.
I gotta mention that maybe there is actually a crack ship that's very popular on our Discord channel. It's not serious at all. It's just like we talk all the time about Wavelia.
Yeah, that word comes up a lot.
Wavelia.
Also,
it's very funny. We also ship Waverly with
everyone. We ship Waverly with everyone.
OT3.
Waverly/Reader is gonna be a thing pretty soon.
Today's very important revelation of Waverly/Old Greek man.
Oh, yeah. We'll definitely talk about that when we get to season 3.
So basically, like, in the Man from U.N.C.L.E, there are only 3 or 4, or if you count April and Mark's 6 recurring characters, and basically there are not many ships in this fandom except for Napoleon and Delia, and we were like talking about what other ships would there be, and that's how we really came up.
Oh, and the galaxy brain theory that Angelique is Waverly's wife.
Oh! Okay, here's what makes it more cursed. Napoleon doesn't know.
Oh no!
Yeah, like Angelique has because Angelique's really rich, so she has like a secret apartment where she like meets with Napoleon.
Yeah. My new favorite ship is actually Waverly / Waverly.
Oh, we're going with the Waverly self-shipping. Wonderful.
Well, now
just like the Lorax fandom.
Is it actually Waverly self-shipping, or is it that we determined recently that every branch head of U.N.C.L.E is just secretly another Waverly, but spelled differently? So, like, there's French Waverly, who is Waverly, and, German Waverly, who's Waverly, and, they're just all Waverly. So maybe that's what Waverly shipping is.
Maybe Waverly's a code name.
You cracked it. You cracked it.
Yeah, but also like
that should have been the code name at the end of the 2015 movie.
Yeah, code name
Waverly.
Waverly.
The man from Waverly.
Waverly is their dad.
Yeah, I was going to say the man from Waverly would literally just be Waverly's children.
Wait, I was gonna say maybe I really regret saying that maybe he's their dad now, because that's like implying that Napoleon and Ilya are brothers, and I am not about that.
Oh, I don't like that.
I mean, my new OTP is Waverly from the show / Waverly from the movie. Yeah, basically, like, there is so much cursed content on our Discord server just because we only care for making bad jokes.
I feel like any fandom that's gone on for long enough starts to be like that.
Yeah, when it's like an open fandom, which means a fandom that there's still content's being produced for. Like, for example, like there's some of the things are still going on, but there's Fantastic Beasts movies coming out, so technically that's an open fandom, even though people aren't really into those because they don't like them. But that's technically an open fandom. Like if they had a fandom for that. So since there's still new content for that, people are still talking about like, oh, what will happen next? What will happen in the next movie? Oh my god! But when it's a closed fandom or a fandom where there's no new content for a long time, like the Man from U.N.C.L E, like you can only go so far with talking about the content of the show, and then you just start making bad jokes.
Yeah.
But also, like, we now have this podcast in which we can discuss the show, actually, and it's very good for my mental health.
We like to strike that balance between, total nonsense and legitimate, what is the word? Literary critique?
Yeah.
Is that what I'm thinking of?
Media analysis.
That's better than literary critique. Ex-English teacher.
So if we can come back to the episode, we should also talk about the very ending of the episode. Because you remember what Ilya actually said?
So, as they get on the boat, Napoleon and Clara are still handcuffed together, and there's this moment where Napoleon goes to itch his face, and he drags Clara's hand with him because they're handcuffed together, and Ilya says, we can cut the chain when we get to Rome, and Napoleon's response is something like, it wasn't holding anything together anyway. So there's this moment where Napoleon finally admits, basically, that, there's nothing between he and Clara, and that, their relationship it's dead, She really does love her husband, even though he's frankly terrible, and that he has given up on this pursuit.
Yes, and there was also a very interesting remark that Ilya made before that, when he said, love, what dangers it leads a man into. And it's funny because, Ilya also got into a lot of danger this episode. Just because. Just because he felt like it, I guess.
Yeah.
So, it is an episode that has a lot of moments that can be read as subtext, I guess.
I'm not gonna lie, my internet or something cut out right when you said that, and it sounded like you just said something about a sexy baguette.
Sexy baguette? Well, that brings us back to the conversation that I had before we started recording. But I said subtext, I guess, not sexy baguette. But it could be a sexy baguette. There were also many sausages in this episode. Alright. Do you have any other thoughts that you would like to share?
So I have an audio processing issue, not just on my computer, but also in my brain. And so sometimes I hear things and it's kind of like how the Sims talk, but it also means that sometimes people say things that I hear sexy baguette instead of guess that's next.
Yeah.
Which, as a teacher, means that I spend a lot of time lying to my children and telling them, oh, I'm sorry, I didn't hear that. When in fact, I heard something, but it wasn't what you said. And, there's only so much repeating back. What I heard was, when the people you're talking to are 11, because if what you heard was something like, don't touch my Wiener Schnitzel, and no sausage, and you gotta back up and think, okay, what were they really saying? And the answer is, I have absolutely no idea, so I'm just gonna pretend I'm deaf. So that's my story, is that I have everything sounds like sexy baguette disease.
Sexy baguette. Well, yeah, I mean, before we started recording, I told Logan that there was a joke on Tumblr that there are only two genders, and they are baguette and another gender is basically Russian, and I can't say it on the record because it's a very bad word.
But it rhymes with wee wee baguettes.
So I like basically me and my best friend both are Russian basically, and we speak French. So we joke that we are that our gender is like suka baguette. Or
it is amazing how off topic we have gotten.
Yeah, is there anything else we want to say about Terbouf, or like are we done?
I think that officially my brain has turned into Slivovits.
so,
Mine too. Mine. I have the brain of a slug right now.
so basically, it was a fun episode, and I had fun in watching it, but also it was pretty disturbing in some places, I would say. So, it's a good episode, but I can't say that it's like perfect.
Yeah, I would say it's a good episode, particularly in terms of. So, I mean, we've talked before about how, there really is no overarching story for Man from U.N.C.L.E, and there's no arcs.
Yeah.
But I do think that this episode kind of matters in terms of that progression of Napoleon and Ilya's friendship.
Yeah.
And I feel like this is kind of a point in the series where like you start to really feel like, oh, okay, this chemistry that we've seen between them actually is going to end up being like a major feature of the show.
Yes, because
definitely.
before this it was not that evident, I would say. And starting with this episode, it just goes
Yeah,
goes
I would agree with that.
full throttle. So next week we will be watching an episode that's called The Deadly Decoy Affair, and it's also pretty good in its Napoleon / Ilya content, but it also has some other stuff going on, so I think that it will be a fun conversation.
All right.
Yeah.
Well,
Thank you for listening, everyone.
Yeah.
How do you say signing off in French?
Oh my god.
Je ne sais pas.
Au revoir.
Au revoir. We are signing off with our baguettes. Until the next time.
Goodbye.
Bye-bye.